I'm Maida Owens. I'll be presenting for Shana, Walton, and myself. We are co-founders of the Bayou Culture Collaborative, or the BCC. I direct the Louisiana Folklore program within the State Division of the Arts. The program is one of 5 partners of the Bayou Culture Collaborative, an initiative of the Louisiana Folklore Society, along with a nonprofit and 2 university centers. You may already know that Louisiana and the Gulf Coast are losing land at the fastest rate in the continental US. In 2016, Louisiana experienced 2 extreme precipitation events, not hurricanes. One community near Baton Rouge, where I live, received 36 inches of rain in 36 hours. For the first time, I considered whether I would have to relocate due to the changing climate. Baton Rouge has been where people evacuate to. Baton Rouge has never evacuated. My first question was, where will I go? Next, I asked, where's everybody else going? Because I didn't want to lose the culture. This personal experience set me on this discovery process. Migration and relocation started increasing after Hurricane Katrina, but since then, the disruption has accelerated. Major multiple hurricanes, flooding, subsidence, saltwater intrusion, and more are motivating people to relocate. It's predicted that 1/4 of the state population, 1.2 million people along the coast, may be confronted with the decision to move in one way or another over the coming decades. Some people move up the bayou to the next highest ground, but more and more are leaving the state, especially the young and educated. Louisiana has started depopulating. In 2018, Jonathan Foray, who directs the Wetlands Discovery Center, approached the Louisiana Folklore Society about his concern about what will happen to our cultures with all the environmental changes happening on our coast. Working with the Louisiana Folklore Society, I realized I was in a position to address this issue, and we launched the BCC. The BCC mission is to help people sustain their traditional cultures and to help people connect in the face of land loss and climate change. We spent 2018 planning. Our first effort was to start conversations and launch a tour of communities of the Gulf while we cast around for longer-term strategies. Of all the partners, I had funding and was in a position to take action. I started the Passing It On workshop grants, which are micro grants, usually $2,000, that pay masters to teach a tradition in small settings. We focused on the most vulnerable communities and traditions. Since 2019, we have funded $85,000 to pass on crafts, music, foodways, and storytelling traditions. Our other mission to help people connect took longer to address. We knew we wanted to do 2 things: bring a wide group of people together, the public, policymakers, researchers, and artists that we knew. Eventually, we wanted to propose concrete steps. My first step was to learn more about the issues and the players. Even though I am a Louisiana native and have directed the Folk Life program for decades, I had not been involved with environmental planning. So I started meeting with state and federal agency staff and expressed my concern about our cultures with the increasing disruption in our state. One agency director pointed out that the BCC had identified a gap in environmental planning and that culture needs to be added to the community resilience conversation. At the time, I didn't know what that meant, but I wrote it down and was determined to learn what it was. It became a goal. What do we need to be doing now? My personal goal was to influence state policy. Being in state government since 1986, I was positioned to work from within the bureaucracy. I realized that conversations between public agencies are quite different from conversations between agencies and constituents. So I have approached these agencies in a collaborative spirit, asking how we could help them rather than taking a more aggressive approach of telling them what they need to do. As a result, I've been invited to serve on several advisory boards and planning committees, such as Louisiana Sea Grant, where we were invited to help them include the human dimension in their call for research proposals. At first, they said they didn't do human dimension, but when we suggested that they help figure out how to help fisher folk be able to continue fishing, they agreed that that would be in their purview. I understand that a more aggressive approach is necessary for many, especially those dealing with environmental pollution. But working from within state government, I have found that counterproductive. If you're working in a state government agency, note that you may have more influence than you realize. You can't build community with people you don't know. So after tossing around some ideas, I started in-person sense of place and loss workshops to allow people to share concerns and get to know each other. There were a few arts organizations and quite a few artists already addressing environmental changes, but they were more likely to focus on mitigation rather than adaptation, much less the human dimension. So I set out to draw the arts and culture network into the climate conversation with workshops and presentations specifically for them. I started with our agency staff and the regional arts councils and gradually broadened the audience. I focused on how the environmental changes will impact our cultures, especially how migration will disrupt communities. This evolved into workshops about climate migration and welcoming newcomers that I presented primarily to arts, folklore, historic preservation, and Main Street programs, both in Louisiana and at national meetings in the US. The goal is to prepare them to participate in the conversation. Basically, I developed the workshop that I wish I had attended when I started on this journey. These workshops and our conversations laid the groundwork for our new community. This wasn't out of thin air. We started with a folklife program and a state folklore society with long histories and good reputations. We added biologist Gary LaFleur, who directs the Center for Bayou Studies, science educator Jonathan Foray, Francophone scholar Rachel Dotery, and myself to be the management team. We all brought our own networks to it with no staff and a few administrative contracts. BCC is a very flat initiative led by this management team of volunteers, one from each of the partners. The question was, how can we become effective? An important realization was that our management team conversations themselves were critical to the long-term success. I cautioned people to plan deeply and carefully before launching anything, and we did. We spent 2 years in planning. We drew on successful models, such as civil rights organizations and environmentalist efforts. We realized we needed a wide community and that while in-person meetings might work on a local level, they wouldn't work on a regional or statewide initiative. So we turned to Zoom, and not only because of the pandemic. And we planned our first online gathering with the same intensity of workshopping a play. In January 2022, with both arts and humanities funding, we started the Bayou Culture Gatherings. As newcomers to the Environmental Planning Network, we knew that we had to clearly communicate our approach. The gatherings have featured researchers, community activists, and tradition bearers. At every gathering, we say that we do not have all the answers and don't support any one strategy, but together we can explore the issues. We also challenge everyone by asking them to start thinking like future ancestors. At every gathering, we ask two questions. What happens to our cultures as migration increases? What would future generations wish we had done? We accomplished in 1 month what we thought would take 6. We hoped for 20 and 90 showed up. Anyone can attend, and the BCC list is now over 1,000. Attendance at gatherings ranges from 40 to 90 people every month. Without prompting, they started creating working groups. BCC now has 5: Culture and Coastal Policy, French Language, Artist and Tradition Bearers, Preparing Receiving Communities, and Protecting Collections. The Culture and Coastal Policy Working Group decided BCC needed a position statement. We took 5 months to finish it, and 50 participated in drafting it. One seasoned planner said that it was basically what she had written 20 years ago, but was better edited. We think our success was helped by the fact that we were new to the Environmental Planning Network and didn't have any baggage, and that we have solely focused on the human dimension and including culture in the community resilience conversation. But we have to admit that some of our success was due to showing up at the right time with the right message. It turned out that many environmentalists, planners, and policymakers shared our concern about our culture and relocation. They had been working in silos. The BCC provided a means for them to connect, and they showed up. We have an interesting mix of environmentalists and agency people, along with the arts and culture people. Actually, agency people ask us to submit public comments as a way to voice what they want but cannot. For example, the Culture and Coastal Policy Working Group wrote responses to the State Coastal Master Plan and its annual plan, both in response to key agency people asking us to. The State Chief Resilience Officer drew upon the BCC as a think tank for the first statewide resilience report. This report clearly shows BCC's influence. The report identifies 4 elements of resilience, and the 4th is health, well-being, culture, and safety. It also identifies 3 priorities for 2024: migration, receiving communities, adapting in place, and cultural preservation is 1, along with heat and insurance. More recently, we broadened our audience by starting in-person culture and climate conversations at community events, such as festivals and libraries. These community discussions are intended to raise awareness about the cultural impact of the state's environmental changes. Community members explore how climate shifts and rapid land loss are affecting arts, heritage, and traditions. To make the working groups more inclusive, we started the Community Voices Project, which provides funds for people from marginalized communities to participate in working groups. We started with funds from the Louisiana Division of the Arts that included some state funds, but much of it was from the National Endowment for the Arts State Partnership Program. We have received funding from the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area, Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities, the Barataria-Terrebonne National Estuary Program, and a grant directly from the National Endowment for the Arts. We're in the process of receiving funds from a national nonprofit for outreach programming and from a family fund. We receive administrative support from Nicholls State University. Why are we so focused on culture? People in Louisiana are dealing with dramatic problems: flooded houses, food insecurity, job losses, and even access to drinking water. So why culture? Our answer is that culture is the key. The disruption is here and now. Culture provides a sense of well-being and community connections that are going to get us through the disruption. People with strong ties to culture and community support report higher levels of life satisfaction. Culture is a source of coastal social cohesion, especially in Louisiana, where culture is a dominant social force. We are one of the stickiest places in the US. People born here tend to die here. We love to celebrate community, particularly at festivals that feature traditional foods and arts. It's not an accident that Louisiana has the most festivals in the US, around 400 a year. But we just said earlier that people are starting to migrate. So why is it important to discuss culture if people are moving? Migration and cultural changes are nothing new. Human history is one of migration, but it often comes with conflict. Conflict happens whether people in large numbers are moving to the next highest ground or across the country. Their mere presence is disruptive. For example, when I spoke to a regional group, they were afraid that climate migrants would overwhelm their communities and that they would lose their sense of place, which might happen. But drawing on culture, we have the tools and resources to help integrate newcomers and balance the interest of long-term residents. Colorblind planning will simply replicate past injustices and result in gentrification. Communities that focus on people and help newcomers integrate into their new community and help long-term residents accept the newcomers are more likely to thrive. Nurturing sense of place is critical to this process. So we end this presentation by returning to one of our core questions. What will future generations wish we had done? This presentation didn't cover everything about the BCC, so I will be there to answer questions. And here's how to connect with the BCC, Shana, and me. Thank you.